Today we start our presentation showing you something. Okay? Can you read this? Can you read this?
Okay, sir.
Yes, possible.
What is it? What is it?
Swagatam.
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 Yeah, what is welcome. It is English. It is English. ME. Okay. Okay. Just for a fun, it's my own creation. I welcome you all to today's presentation. എല്ലാവർക്കും സ്വാഗതം. I welcome. Why did I show this? I will explain to you later. Because today's the central idea which I want to present to you is about the history of cognitive psychology, in which many concepts can be explained with the help of this diagram, this welcome. So I made it just to explain this. Okay, last session we started with the major approaches to understand human behavior. Only I'm just reviewing it, and for those who are for the first time listening to me, they also will be benefited by this explanation. Therefore, I am putting it not in detail, but in brief. We talked about the 6 major approaches for understanding human behavior. And behavioristic approach, cognitive approach, psychoanalytic approach, humanistic approach, social learning approach, neurobiological approach, likewise. And cognitive psychology is only one of the very many approaches. And we have seen last time the domains of cognitive psychology. As per your text material I am talking. We have seen from sensation, sensory, perceptual and conceptual processes, till the very complex process of reasoning, problem solving, hypothetical deductive thinking, linguistic functions, all are integrated to all our intellectual functions. In brief, any function pertaining to the acquisition of knowledge, the retention or memory of what we have learned, acquired, application, and also transfer, we have seen. That much we have seen. Then we started talking about some research issues. You have seen what we mean by research, what are the major classifications of research in psychology. Some see only the peripheral areas of this, because in a presentation like this we cannot justifiably deal with all these meticulous aspects. Therefore, we have had a bird's eye view about the major issues in research. The steps like hypothesizing, data collecting, analyzing, either confirming or rejecting the hypothesis. Okay, we have seen longitudinal and cross-sectional method. This much was done in the last presentation. Today, we are going to start with the history of the development of cognitive psychology. When talking about the history of development of cognitive psychology, we have to understand that in the beginning of the 20th century, ever since the last decade of 19th century, the domain was totally under the control of behavioristic psychology, behaviorism or association, SR, association, connectionism, propounded by John B. Watson, P.F. Skinner, E.L. Thorndike, Ivan Pavlo. Their psychology dominated the entire psychological horizon. So cognitive psychology is a revolt against the existing concept about human behavior. Human behavior, if we split into stimuli and responses, it will lose its meaning. The whole dominates the sum of its parts. The whole is not merely the assemblage or total of its parts. This was their invention, in fact. Starting with, we will have to go to the history, to Germany, to Berlin University in Germany, where Max Wertheimer, those who want to take down, MAX WERTHIEMER, Max Wertheimer. Another person is Kurt Kofka, K-U-R-T, Kofka, K-O-F-F-K-A, Kurt Kofka. And another person, his name was Wolfgang Kohler. Kohler is enough, K-O-H-L-E-R, Kohler. Wolfgang Kohler, that is the full name. Max Wertheimer was doing some experiment in physics. He was conducting his studies on 5 phenomena. You know, 5 phenomena? In a film, when you are seeing movement, when still pictures are projected rapidly, we are perceiving movement. Actually, if you take the film roll, you can see single films, pictures. When they are projected rapidly, without much interval, you are perceiving motion. This perceiving of motion is because of that phenomenon is called 5 phenomena. Max Wertheimer was doing the experiment. Kofka and Kohler were his experimental subjects reporting what they see. They understood that there were 2 poles, upon which there were 2 cutouts, and a green light was projected one by one. When the green light on this, then this, they could see separate lights. When the interval was shortened, they felt that the light was swinging from. When again the interval was reduced, they felt that there is a single line. I remember while I was a small child, I used to go to the kitchen. In those days, there was no gas stove or nothing. We used firewood. And I would take a piece of firewood and swing and make 8 and make so many days. This phenomenon of perceiving continuity, they were thinking about why. It's a psychological phenomenon, not simply physical phenomenon. The brain aggregates and segregates. The brain stimulation is sometimes aggregating, sometimes segregating. While it is aggregating the previous stimulus with the next stimulus within the shortest interval, we are perceiving movement. They started researching based on this. This is how a school of psychology called Gestalt psychology. The spelling is G-E-S-T-A-L-T, Gestalt psychology, started. So when behaviorism is explained as molecular, Gestalt psychology is molar. Okay? When behaviorist psychology is partistic, stimulus, response, stimuli and responses, this is holistic. Several experiments were conducted in this area, and they had developed a theory emphasizing on perceptual experiences, their processing in the brain functioning as a field force, like a magnetic field. The brain functions like a field force, and our perception is considerably influenced by the field forces in the brain. Later on, we have a field theory by Kurt Lewin. We will come to that. So this is the beginning of cognitive psychology. I will show you some slides, okay? So can you see this? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So see
Yes,
the initial part of both this. In the first one, you will read it 1, 3, 4, 9, I hope. In the second line, you will read it as BALL. Though the figures in the first line and the second line, the first two figures are the same. So it is not the stimulus that matters, how the stimulus is interpreted, perceived, because of our past experiences, because of our familiarity, we are perceiving it. So that is more important. See another figure. Can anybody perceive an English word in this? Please tell me if you could.
Let.
There is an English, let, very good.
Let.
Very good. When you perceive the white figure, the white portion hidden in the figure, you are perceiving it as let. But some people will perceive the black figure. So this is another major contribution of Gestalt psychology, the figure ground perception. Sometimes the figures may alter. We cannot go to that now. So what I mean is, our perception and our understanding about the world around is based on holistic perception. The same figures can be presented differently and different meaning can be obtained. I shall give you a very small example right now. A very small example. Please see. It is not in the presentation. See here, can you see this? Can you see this? Hello?
Yes, sir.
There are
Yes, sir.
there are three sets of parallel lines and an independent line. My question is, where is the independent line? Towards the right or towards the left?
Yes, sir, right.
This is the tendency for us to perceive closer things together, right?
Yes, sir.
But this is one set of parallel line. This is another set of parallel line. This is also another set of parallel line, right?
Yes.
Therefore, this is the independent line. Can we deny? The question is, things those are closer, it's called a closure, a phenomenon. They are perceived together. So, in Gestalt psychology, actually, holistic perception, and so many experiments were conducted by Wertheimer, Kohler, and Kafka. And Kohler's experiment with chimpanzees about their perceptions became very popular. There is a chimpanzee called Sultan. And the holistic perception will lead to insights, they believed. In teaching also, this was experimented by Wertheimer. There is a very famous experiment called the parallelogram experiment. Wertheimer, his experiment was conducted in 5th standard children in schools. The book is Productive Thinking. The title of the book is Productive Thinking. In his Productive Thinking, he explains how he conducted this phenomenon of problem solving by holistic perception. He wanted to teach them area, not like the way we teach. We teach length into breadth is the area. He didn't want to teach the children this formula which will induce slavish tendency, dependency in the child. It will never generate his original capability of thinking. Therefore, he wanted to give them a figural concept. Figure, configuration, meaning, symmetry, pattern. These are all the favorite vocabulary of Gestalt psychologists. What is the figural concept of area? I am putting this question to you. What is the figural concept of area? Sir, it is length into breadth. No. The figural concept is square. If you find the area of a postal stamp, you put it in square millimeters. Square millimeters. If you want to explain the area of a country or of a state, of a district, we put it in terms of square kilometers, right? Square is the basic figural concept of the to represent area. So what Wertheimer did was, he took rectangular figures, a figure shaped like this, a rectangular figure, papers, flashcards, etc., even pieces of clothes. Then he showed the children how to find the exact number of squares in it. He divided them into putting lines and cutting them sometimes. And how many squares are there in a line? How many lines are there? To find this easily, you may simply multiply this the number of lines with the number of rows. He was teaching, explaining children like this. Afterwards, he presented the children with an oblique parallelogram. I will show you the shape. This shape was given to children, 5th standard children. They were asked to find the area. Some children reported, no, this is not taught to us. Some other children said, so we learned it, but we forgot it. Children will respond like that. But one child, a girl child, folded it here and said, this is the problem. Immediately, looking to the other side of also, she had an aha experience, an insight. This is called insight. An aha. Sir, can I have a pair of scissors? I will cut this and put it here and make it a rectangle. I can find the area, she said. Another boy in the same class folded this like a bangle. Imagine an area, a rectangle, this parallelogram folded like this. Sir, I can cut it anywhere and make it a rectangle. I will find the area, he said. This aha experience, the sudden discovery was possible only because of holistic perception. If you take a drop of water from the ocean and test it using your electron microscope, it will never help you to understand the ocean. Okay? If you want to understand Taj Mahal, take a small marble piece, take it into the technology lab at NIT, Calicut, test it. Will it enable you to understand Taj Mahal? This is how behaviorists are explaining behavior. Got it? This is the criticism. We have to understand things. So he is giving the example of music. There are saptasuras, only 7 suras. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, tha, ni. There are saptasuras. But with these saptasuras, how many tunes, mysterious, enchanting tunes are being created by with different assemblages of this. Similarly, human behavior, because of the cognitive processes, perceive things based on holistic perception, based on their insights. It will be better remembered. Something arrived at through insights will be better remembered. And I give you an assignment. Go to any book prepared for TTC students or B.Ed students. You can see Kohler's Sultan experiment in it. I'm not leaving into it. I'm not going to, because we have so many other things to discuss. So, starting with this Gestalt psychology, we have some other psychologists also who contributed to this. I will show you that. Please wait. So some important cognitive theories. The names of those psychologists are written here. I hope you can see. Can you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Gestalt psychology by Wertheimer, Kohler, and Kafka. And next came the sign Gestalt theory by E.C. Tolman. He talks about cognitive mapping. He conducted so many experiments in rats. Rats were put in shafts and they were drawn through water mazes. Complicated routes are there in the maze and the routes are filled in water. Rats are positioned in a wooden shaft and they are pulled through the different routes of the maze and they are taken to the goal where food is kept. Later on, after draining the water, when the rats were replaced in the same route, they could easily run the maze without making mistakes and reach their goal. He believed that brain is mapping. This is called cognitive mapping. When you are going to a strange city, within a few days, if you are trotting the different streets later on, you will have a cognitive map to reach different places, including the place of your stay, your residence, right? This is Tolman's theory. Next comes the field theory. This is called Kurt Lewin. Lewin believed that the brain, Lewin was a physicist again. He introduced physical terms into his theory. He believed that mind has different forces. They are called field forces. He calls them vector, valence, many other the physical terms are used. So brain has a field and the field is a psychological field. It's not a physical field. With an example, I will make it clear. Imagine a spider is sitting on the right side of your shoulder, okay, on your right shoulder. You are not perceiving it. Though there is physical proximity, it's a poisonous spider. Okay? Until and unless you are aware of it, it is outside the boundary of your psychological field. But your son or your daughter staying in a hostel in a city far apart, in Bangalore, for example, she or he is in your psychological field. So the field has, this is called a topological theory also, because just like a piece of a tire, rubber tire, we pull it, it will expand its region in that direction. If you leave it, it will recoup the previous position, right now. Similarly, brain fields operate likewise. And this is the theory, and he talks about so many things, so many other experiments are there, which we don't want to go now. The next theory in cognitive psychology is the meaningful verbal learning theory of Ausubel, and the reception learning also it is called. It is called, his theory is sometimes called advanced organizer theory. This advanced organizer is the cognitive restructuring for accepting new knowledge, something given in advance. So in teaching, this also happened to be a very important contribution, right? Next theory is the discovery learning theory of, so many persons are associated with this. Piaget, Jean Piaget, Jerome S. Brunner, Richard Sussman, Hilda Taba. They believed that instead of something being put into, something being given to, These children should be made to discover. Of course, you can add one more name, Vygotsky's name along with this. The next is Piaget's theory. And Piaget's theory, which I will come to later on. Piaget's theory, we have to explain in detail. Perhaps, I don't think I will be able to do it. So these are the things. Next domain is memory. So learning, perceiving, and learning. These are the most important aspects in these cognitive functions through which we move into further higher complex phenomena of brain processes, right? So in memory, again, it's another domain of cognitive psychology. Another history I'm talking about, experiments conducted in history. We can broadly classify memory into STM and LTM. STM means short-term memory. LTM is long-term memory. See, if I ask you the name of the German psychologist in Berlin University now, you will be able to say. If I ask you the same thing in the evening, you may not perhaps remember unless you look into the notes you have written. So, but if I ask you your date of birth or the name of your child, immediately you will remember that. That is long-term memory, right? STM means short-term memory, right? Okay, in memory also, we have so many brain functions associated with.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Sir, could you please explain this short-term memory and long-term memory a little elaborately, sir?
Sure. You have a very right to ask it, and please take the liberty to interfere with me whenever you want to take to ask me any questions. Okay. Okay. Nice. So before going to this, come on. Somebody also is.
Yeah. Sorry, sir, to interrupt you. Actually, based on the questions on previous year's question papers, this terminology of short-term memory and long-term memory is frequently asked. Maybe the student would be more aware of it.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So listen to me. Okay. In short-term memory, what happens, the brain accepts stimulations through our sensory organs, through visual, auditory, olfactory, or even kinesthetic input. The brain takes it into meaningful interpretation. We call it perceive. For some time, it will be retained there. Unless and until you reinforce it, it will be disappearing, vanishing gradually. So that memory is only for a short term, for a short period. Later on, you need not memorize it. I shall give an example. Examples are always better to explain. Putting illustrations. You are dialing a number, searching a number, finding the phone number, and you are contacting a person who is not in your call list, right? You are contacting him. You switched off your phone and kept it there. Suppose immediately your spouse comes to you and asks, whom did you call now? Could you please give me the number? She is not or he is not trusting you. Okay, that is today's major problem. It's a psychological problem. And she wanted to test whether you have contacted the same number or not. You will be able to say the number immediately because you have just now contacted in that number. You will be able to say, oh, it is 9447615286. Don't be carried away by this number. Need not be a correct number. Okay? You will be able to say that. But suppose the next day, somebody asks you, which was that number, you yourself want to call the person, contact the person again. Do you think you will be able to remember this number unless you refer to your telephone directory? This is the problem. So long-term memory means this memory through the, here you can see hippocampus, right? Hippocampus is associated with cognitive memory. Please take down hippocampus. It is a brain part in our cortex. This hippocampus receives this. It is transformed to RNA molecules, and preserved in the axons of the brain cells. This is the neurobiological explanation about memory. So in long-term memory, the input through sense organs are preserved almost permanently because we are repeating it. We are often, there is an old theory of memory, the theory called trace theory. Memory traces, there was a hypothetical explanation. Memory traces are preserved through use. If disused, it will vanish. If you are repeatedly using it, the traces will get refreshed and it will be retained for longer periods. So LTM means, long-term memory means, memorizing longer because we are revising it, repeating it periodically, and therefore, as a result of this, the memory traces, TRACES, memory traces, that was a hypothetical explanation used by psychologists earlier. Now we have neural evidences that in the axons of our brain, new RNA molecules are developed as a result of learning. If this RNA is retained there, memory is possible. If this RNA is disturbed, what you have learned will be forgotten. I remember an experiment conducted by a neurologist called Flexner, Flexner, Flexner. He conducted his experiments in white rats. The white rats were placed in a cage, in electronically, it was a sophisticated device. The floor of the cage was made of metal wire mesh, so as to give electric shock to the, wherever it runs, it will get the electric shock. Okay, can you imagine? In the corner of that cage, there was a lever-like mechanism. When the rat runs around, it will accidentally touch the lever and the circuit will be cut off. Just before the electric shock, a red light will flicker on one of the walls of the cage. It was a signal. Within half a second after the flicker of the light, shock will get. Without knowing what to do, electric shock is not a pleasant experience, you know. Without knowing what to do, the rat will fret around in the cage, right? It will accidentally touch. Later on, it learned how to operate the lever and escape from the shock. Trials were repeated. Later on, the rat learned that the red light is a signal for the oncoming shock. And without waiting for the red light, without waiting for the shock, the minute the light flickered, it dashed to the lever and unfailingly operated the lever. Okay? It learned, in psychological terms, classical conditioning, signal learning, and operant conditioning, the Skinner's operant, liver pressing and to escape, becoming instrumental to escape from the shock. Instrumental conditioning or operant conditioning, Skinner's. So these two, using these two processes, learning took place, right? This rat was later on given a strong dose of an antibiotic called puromycin. Puromycin in antibiotic is an antibiotic that will sure inhibit RNA molecules in the brain. This injection was given to the rat. It was replaced in the same cage on the same day. And what happened? When the red light flickered, the rat was blinking at the red light. When there was shock, it again started fretting around as though it has forgotten how to escape from the shock. So what I mean is, this is a study quoted by, I think, Hilgard, Atkinson, and Atkinson in their book Neurobiological Theories of Learning is there. Bover and Hilgard, they have written a book, Theories of Learning. The last chapter is exclusively based on neurobiological theories of learning. So what I mean is, this RNA is nowadays called PKM zeta. This RNA associated with memory is called P capital, K capital, M capital, ZDTA small letter. I don't know why they have put half of it in capital, half of it in. I am not aware of it. You see. Okay.
Sir, could you please repeat that word?
PKM. M
Okay.
for memory.
Okay.
Zeta, ZDTA.
Thank you.
Please remember that this is the latest discovery. Some of your examiners need not know this. I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm not belittling anybody. This is the latest discovery which I happen to read in a journal. I don't remember the name of the journal. Okay.
Thank you.
So the hippocampus is, but about emotional memory, we have another brain part. It is affective memory. Can you read that? Because the contrast is much less. Amygdala. Can you read that? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Amygdala, another part of the brain, is responsible for our emotional memory. We are not at present interested in emotion. We are only interested in cognition now. Okay. So we will skip it. Okay. The memory trace theories, right? Once upon a time, this was the major theory to explain memory, the process of memory. In this, we have theory of decay by disuse by Thorndike and Woodworth. I will give you time to take down. Don't worry. Okay. And we have another theory called theory of interference. Okay. Theory of decay of memory traces, dying out of memory traces. Theory of interference, learning some material and interpolated learning of a similar material over and above it causes interference of past learning. This is what is called retroactive inhibition. Interpolation of similarity and lack of thoroughness leads to forgetting. I hope you can see.
Yes, sir, very well. And
Okay.
don't be for the time, sir, because everyone, all of them, the 77 out there, you can take screenshots of this particular PPT. So it will be more convenient for your friends.
So you can't read it and take it down now?
Yeah, we are taking it down, but again, a screenshot would be more, easier way. So you cannot, you don't have to spend much time on.
Okay. Yeah. So this theory of interference has two processes. These are all part of your study material, I think. But one is called retroactive inhibition. The other is called proactive inhibition. Retroactive inhibition means later learning influencing the memory traces developed by past learning. Interference like that. Backward. Retroaction means backward direction. Retroactive inhibition means the latest learning passing on to interfering with the past learning traces. Okay. In proactive inhibition, past learning is thorough and therefore present learning is not sufficiently thorough. Therefore, past learning influences present memory traces. That is pro-action, forward action. Okay. Oh, this we have seen already. So I'll come back to. Okay, so I hope the brain function, especially the function of the hippocampus, is something very important in our cognition, especially memory. When there are some infections in hippocampus, or when there are plaques, PLAQUES, plaques developing in the neurons of hippocampus, diseases like dementia, Alzheimer's, etc. may be the consequence. So associated with the memory, if our experiences are retained permanently in the brain cells, that will lead to LTM. If it is inadequately registered there, the retrieval will be difficult. Therefore, it will be not remembered. This is LTM, and with examples, I hope you can explain that.
So for this
LTM
and STM differences, which you elaborated very much. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Shall we proceed to the next concept now?
Sure, sir.
Okay. The next in the history, we are talking about the history of cognitive development. Okay. Then only one thing will be left, that is about the issues in cognitive development. There is another subsection in your study material, your syllabus. Let us see how much we can do. Now we have to talk about another major theory in cognitive development and cognitive processing. This theory was proposed by Jean Piaget. That is the correct pronunciation. JEAN. It is a French name. Jean Piaget. He belonged to Switzerland. Piaget. Piaget. Jean Piaget, who was basically a biologist who got his PhD in biology, and in his early age he was appointed as a museum curator, which is a very responsible job. He was responsible for developing this theory. His theory is called psychogenetic epistemology. Psychogenetic epistemology. That is the name of his theory. It is a psychological theory. It is a genetic theory. genetic theory, a biological theory, right? It's a psychological theory, it's a biological theory, it is a theory of epistemology. What is it? Epistemology means theory of knowledge. Epistemology is a branch of philosophy. It's a theory of knowledge. It relates to metacognition. Metacognition means going beyond cognition, knowing about how we know. I think the last time we mentioned about it. Understanding about how we understand, right? So his theory is called, actually many people call it a cognitive theory likewise. It's a peripheral explanation. Actually his theory's name is psychogenetic epistemology. He believed that schema, the plural of which is schemata, schema, cognitive structures are developed from our experiences, starting from sensory and motor experiences up to higher cognitive experiences. We are expanding our schema, building up further and further to complex schemas or schemata, schemas both are used interchangeably nowadays. Piaget's meticulous examination of his own three girl children. He had three, Lucina, Laurent, and Jacqueline. His three children, he observed each stage of their development, and he developed his theory because he was a biologist who was very keen in his observation. It is reported that even at the age of 5, he wrote an article about albino bird, which was published in a journal, a science journal. So such a meticulous observation he had even in his childhood. So he prepared his theory. Schema are cognitive structures, sensory motor schema. For example, if you pull the drawer, pull the knob, the drawer can be sensory motor experience. If the child pulls the thread attached to the toy, pulling the thread will enable it to take the toy, the child learns. Or pulling the mattress to take the toy which is placed on the other side of the mattress. Piaget calls the baby child, an embryonic scientist. So cognition, this is sensory motor activity. Visually directed reach and catching hold of things. See, from sensory motor. Later on, the knob has to be twisted and pulled, right? That is another further development of the same schema. Schema is further developing. And such schemas are further and further developing. This is the process of cognitive development, which has 3 basic phenomena. One is, he calls assimilation. The second is called disequilibration. The third is called accommodation. Because of these 3 processes, the schema develop. Of course, the schema developed through sensory and motor experiences. Processing information, developing schema, cognitive development, right? Schema development is actually cognitive development. They are the bricks and mortar of cognition. Schema. So schema, how can we explain the 3 processes? First process is called assimilation. Assimilation means, please find the difference between assimilation and accommodation. Okay? Assimilation means receiving the new information to the existing schema. That is called assimilation. For example, a child sees a dog reared at home. It is a black dog. It is a fur. See, it's a Pomeranian, right? It's barking. It's wagging its tails. The dog has a schema of a dog, right? Later on, when they visit their relative's house, he happens to see a white Pomeranian there, right? His schema assimilates the same thing into the existing schema. This is also a dog, right? Later on, while on the street, they see a stray dog. Okay, that's also dog, mother is saying. So the schema of dog gets enlarged and enlarged by receiving new experiences to the existing schema. This process is called assimilation. Sometimes this is not possible. A new experience cannot be received into the it cannot fit into the existing schema. I shall give you an example, which I have discovered myself, right? Piaget talks about the schema of a dolphin. Dolphin is not a fish. Dolphin will be initially put into, it cannot be assimilated. So it's also a fish. It is like swimming in water. Likewise, I am giving you a silly example, very silly example. A physics teacher teaches about the properties of metals in his class. He brings several kinds of metals. He talks about the properties of a metal. It can be burned and made to oxides, iron oxide, mercuric oxide, likewise. It can be beaten and flattened. It can be pulled and made strings. It can expand while heated. So many properties are taught. Okay. Next period, his chemistry teacher comes to the class. The child has a concept about metal, a schema about metal. It's a solid something. It can be expanded, it can be heated, it can be converted into oxide, likewise. Later, next period, the chemistry teacher comes with a bottle in which he has some mercury. The chemistry teacher says, this is metal. It is a liquid form. The child cannot assimilate this new metal into the existing concept, existing schema of metal. Therefore, what happens? He has to modify. The chemistry teacher explains, oh yeah, this also can be converted into oxides. This will expand. Haven't you seen the thermometer? Doctor measuring your temperature. This mercury line expands when heated. So this is also has all the properties of metal, though it is in a liquid state. So the child accommodates his existing schema. That means modifies, expands, enhances his existing schema so as to incorporate new experience. That process is called accommodation. If assimilation is not possible, there is a state of mind that is called disequilibration. This is also called a cognitive dissonance, inability to accept. See, there's some problem. This cognitive dissonance is a motivating force because this disequilibration is not pleasant. We want to equilibrate. That is a human tendency. Everything in an equilibrated state. It's not only human tendency, it's a physical tendency. The whole world wants to equilibrate. Okay, so mind also has the tendency to equilibrate. So that is a motivating force to understand further, to explore further, and to equilibrate further. So accommodation. See, with a small example also, I shall explain it. These are the basic processes of cognitive development proposed by Piaget, right? Assimilation, disequilibration, and accommodation. The more we accommodate, the more the schema will expand, enhance, and become schemes. Schema will become schemes. Scheme is the higher symbolic manipulation. Okay, I shall differentiate schema and scheme with an example. Suppose that I am saying Amma. Amma. You have a sensory experience. Immediately, you visualize the face of your mother who is far apart. Okay. Even the smell of her body comes to you. Right? The voice of your mother, the auditory image, the visual image, imagery, the visual, auditory, sensory experiences dominate your thinking. This is a schema, right, about mother. But when I say Amma, you are thinking about motherland, mother tongue, motherhood. Okay? What happens here? It is not an image-based schema. It is a symbolic manipulation. Right? This is all called schemes. So schema, through these processes, assimilation, disequilibration, accommodation processes going on, and becomes schemes, later on enabling you to engage in abstract thinking, hypothetico-deductive thinking, probability thinking, reasoning, inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, the complex forms. This is the basic concept of Piaget's cognitive development. And he also talks about 4 stages in cognitive development, which we cannot enter now. Okay, what are the 4 stages? I will just mention. The first stage is up to 2 years, sensory motor period. Sensory motor period, not stage period, because in each period there are sub-stages. Therefore, better to use period, sensory motor period. So the cognition is based on sensory experiences and motor experiences. Especially for a child below 8 months, out of sight means out of existence. The child is playing with your expensive specs. Suppose my grandchild sometimes takes this. What I do is, I will immediately snatch it. Oh, the crow came and took it back, and I hide it behind me. The child forgets the existence of my specs thereafter. Out of sight, out of existence. So that is the object permanence. There is a phenomenon. I cannot explain all these limitations now because it will take a long time to explain and finish all these things. I remember for MAD classes in Calicut University, I could not complete it even though I spent 12 long hours for explaining Piaget's theory. So such is the breadth of his theory and depth of his theory. So what I mean is just sensory motor period, your visual, auditory and other sensory experiences and your motor experiences dominate your thinking. Okay. The next period is called pre-operational period. The operation means mental functions. The manipulation, ability to manipulate your schema. That is called pre-operational stage. Up to roughly 5 years, right? Then next comes the concrete operational stage. In the absence of things, he cannot think. He can think only with the tools of, concrete objects, thinking only in terms of concrete objects. Shall I give you an example? Please listen to me carefully. Okay? I think last time I explained it. Radha is taller than Geeta. Geeta is not as tall as Anuradha, but she is taller than Ambika. Ambika is taller than Anjali. Anjali, who is the tallest? Okay. This requires abstract thinking ability. Instead, if you are drawing lines when I say each name and putting the first letter of that name on the line, you can very well, comparing it visually, you can say this. Concrete thinking. The first one is abstract thinking. If you are capable of answering so and so is the tallest, of course, and so is the shortest, of course. Right? See, this abstract thinking ability is a result of cognitive growth. This ability is attained only after formal operational period, after 12 years. So only after 12 years, it need not be necessary, it not necessarily be, that means every individual need not attain that level unless environmental challenges, nourishment is given to the cognitive growth. Stimulations are required. Challenges, intellectual challenges are required. Nourishment is required. Nutrition is required. Exploration on the environment is required. Problem solving chances are provided. Then only abstract thinking, higher cognitive functions like inductive, deductive reasoning, etc. is possible. So this is how Piaget explains. 4 stages are there. I simply mentioned the names of these 4 periods: the sensory motor period, pre-operational period, concrete operational period, and formal operational period. Only after 12 years we can attain the formal. The child is not a miniature adult. The child's thinking is different. His cognitive processes are different. His perceptions also are different. By experience, by environmental exploration, he expands his schema and develops his cognition. So I'll conclude. Okay, there is another person, Vygotsky, both are Lev Vygotsky, L-E-V, Lev Vygotsky, who was a disciple of Piaget. Later on, because of differences of opinion, Vygotsky parted from Piaget, and he proposed his social cognitive theory. Piaget's is a theory of individual cognition development and language development also. And Vygotsky emphasized social interaction, especially for language development. So these are the major developments. Later on came to the development of computer simulations, the brain compared with computer processing, receiving, transforming, processing information. So many theories came thereafter. The cybernetics influenced psychology and how thinking takes place. Analogy from computers also were used for explaining this. Now it has further developed into artificial intelligence and comparing human cognition with artificial intelligence, how it can be manipulated, how it can be controlled, how it can be explained in terms of the complex phenomenon of human cognition, how it can be explained comparing with artificial intelligence. These researches are still going on in this area. So this is the history of cognitive. So we have neurobiological explanation, we have field explanations for this, we have explanations based on insights, explanations based on schemata development, and thereby this is the history of cognitive development. And next major explanation will be the issues in cognitive development, which we will postpone for the next presentation. There is one more presentation. In the next presentation, I will try to explain to you the major issues in cognitive development. For the time being, I am waiting for your queries. I will try to answer within my constraints. You can ask me the major points which I am not clear, which you need further examples. Okay, I don't know. I am not familiar with your question papers. Formerly, I used to be. Nowadays, I am not much associated with IGNOU unless I am compelled by people like your coordinator and the coordinator in Malappuram also. Nowadays, I keep away from all this because I have got some other engagements. Okay, please, I am waiting for your queries. Thank you for patiently listening.
Hi, sir.
Hello, sir.
Hello, come on.
Sir,
Come on.
shall I? Yes, sir. This is not that related to the topic, but shall I ask you, sir, why children have sharper memory than elder people? It's not old people.
Very good question. Very good question. It is related to this. How can you say that it is not related to this? It is directly related to this. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
It's a very pertinent question, a very meaningful question. So children, small children, their neurons are very potential. There is a tremendous offshoots and pathways being established in human brain. And the chemicals, brain chemicals like acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is the neural conductor, the chemical that, dopamine, serotonin, all these chemicals are vibrant, The child's mind is considered to be like molten plastic. It is not my analogy. This is the analogy given by Jose Delgado, Delgado, a Spanish neurologist, compared human brain like molten plastic. If plastic is melted, even you can imprint anything in it. You can change the shape of it and anything can be received by it, So we can put it into any shape. Similarly, in the brain, it is growing tremendously. And even before birth itself, brain growth is there up to 75%, Later on, environmental stimulation enables the person to develop the brain functions. The structural functions will be there by birth. The functional elements will be nurtured by the environment. So the child has a photographic memory, this is called. Even if you show the picture of a cat, some children will say the number of stripes on the cat's tail. 6, likewise, So my battery is coming down. So please rush with your questions because my battery will be going down. I cannot connect it here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Sir, can you tell me about the LOP model, sir? Levels of processing model.
Levels of processing information. What do you mean?
Yes, sir.
Levels of processing information. The first level is sensory input, right? Next level is the input taken, transmitted into the corresponding brain cells. Say the input from the eye is reaching the backside of your brain, which is called occipital region of your brain. the input through the ear is going to the central part of your brain. So the second step is transmission of sensory experiences to brain cells. The third is brain processing this information, cognitive processing, brain cells processing. Our cortex has so many functions, classifying, sometimes from the right hemisphere to the left hemisphere and so forth, interacting with other experiences, interacting one sensory input with another sensory input, right? So brain interactions, that is another next stage. Then retaining, perhaps in the form of RNA molecules or in the form of our repeated experiences, either emotionally also. Sometimes we remember better when it is emotionally charged, you know. When there is an emotional charge, we remember better, right? So anything learned with interest, with enthusiasm, with positive attitude, with high motivation will definitely be learned better. Won't it be? Right? So brain is contributing to this and enabling to process further, right? Retain further. That's it. Then retrieval.
Thank you, sir.
Then retrieval.
Thank you very much for your classes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. Thank you. We will meet in the next. I did not announce the date next because I am thinking of coming back to India. And
Excuse me, sir.
Okay.
oh, come on.
One
Come
more
on,
question.
Ah.
So it is usually said that left-handers can't wake up early in the morning.
I don't think it has any scientific validity. Is it experimentally proved? I don't know. Whether left-handers, if that is so, Amitabh Bachchan must be waking up at 2 a.m. and myself waking up at 8 a.m. I don't know. I think it is only a hypothesis. It's only hypothesis needs to be tested before accepting it. Unless it is experimentally proved, I cannot